the definition of love is it's an emotion, right? It's an emotion that we all feel, and we identify it with our heart, so to speak. That's where we feel the love from. What does love mean? Everybody has a different meaning as what love means. My meaning of love is just caring, in the sense of just like being appreciative and caring, making sure that you do unto others what you want done to yourself, in a sense. So if you know you don't like something, then 9 times out of 10 you shouldn't do it to somebody else. But that's basically, for me, that's what love means to me in a general form. Personally, love means a whole lot of things personally. You know what I mean? It's affection, it's devotion, it's it's basically you stepping outside of yourself and giving selfless, like you're selfless at this point. You're not selfish, you're selfless, like in a sense of just basically giving your all to an individual without no ego, without no pride, without any of those things. You just let yourself go and allow your emotions to take control. And that's love for me, personally.
It's a lot to take in when you actually have to break down the emotion. But I would say after becoming a father, like love became like a whole nother thing. It's one thing to love your partner, and I've been married for 17 years. It's one thing to love your mom, your family, love your job and all that. But I think like the pinnacle of love for me, when you're coming up, I always think of like that KRS-One song, Love's Gonna Get You. Like he starts out wanting to just get things for his family and make sure that's cool, but then it's like the cars and everything, you gotta be, cognizant of those material kind of loves that you have. But then when I became a father, it was like, whatever they need or whatever I have to do for them, I want to make sure that they have it. I want to make sure that I'm there for them.
With all of the new and different meanings that love takes on, as men, do you feel that publicly it's taboo for us to talk about love?
Can I add one piece to that? Because it's a question I have. There's this new thing where people are like, yo, I appreciate you. And I'm like, I think love could have been inserted there, but not always. So my question is that part of that a layer of the taboo?
I think men have their way of showing love to each other. I was literally telling this to somebody yesterday, where when I see I haven't seen Daytwan for a while, and Daytwan is one of those people that I really love. Like he's just such a great guy. There's a way that men embrace themselves. That's the way they show love. I'm a big fan of the hug. It's like the pound and the
pound
hug.
The pound
and the hug, but that's like it's this extra affection that a lot of men are giving themselves. And in regards to this whole thing about taboo, I don't know. There's kind of like this battle of the sexes thing that's kind of happening that I'm not a fan of, and I feel like there's a lot of young kids and a lot of folks that are just being angry, and it's up to older men to share their wisdom. And one thing with me is that I've gone through a lot in the past 2 years because my mom passed away. So there's a part of me that love. It's like I love my mother more, right? But there's a void also, right? And there's also kind of navigating through that and getting older and not having kids. You know what I'm saying? At least, if I had kids, there's this source of unconditional love.
Like I know all of these men, and I have great relationships with all of you, and it is a brother-sister relationship.
There's this thing happening where it's not a taboo, but for some reason men are not allowed to be vulnerable. As much as people and women and folks ask for men to be vulnerable, they're made fun of.
So what is vulnerability from a male perspective? What is vulnerability? Because I have a woman's perspective on vulnerability.
Being an artist, like you're pouring your heart and soul into your work. for it to be judged by the masses. People can be cruel, people can be heartless, but I think there's incredible strength and bravery in being vulnerable and showing a deeper level, that there are layers deep, and it's okay to put that out there in the world. It doesn't make me any less of a man, doesn't make me any, sort of less powerful, strong, I mean, whatever terms you want to give it. I find like, I think that's a real gift to have that, to not have to always just be macho, like, to kind of co-sign what you're saying. It's like that love and that embrace. I mean, people need that. People are hurting constantly, even though there may be a beautiful game face. Like, wow, that dude has like everything together. You can just see it. That person might just under the surface be crushed. And working through things daily to come back to that place. But I think, one of my things, and it's a very conscious decision, is, everybody talks about, self-love, loving yourself, taking care of yourself. It's important, but I find, and sort of to piggyback off of what you said, it's like, it's really about selfless love. It's a giving constantly of yourself. You don't know how long you have, while we're here, and I'm gonna make sure 100% that everybody that I respect and admire and cherish in my world feels that I really care, and I'm there, and I'm present, and I listen more than I speak, and I want to absorb the knowledge. I think that bolsters who I am as a loving human being, you know what I mean, that is just like genuine and honest, you know what I mean, and anything that, has those negative things, I try and solve to then make it a lesson through that experience. And then how do I apply that, and how can I help other people? How can I make other people feel safe around me? I think that's, really been an agenda, in a challenging 2016 of extreme highs and extreme lows. There is a point of like, okay, starting right now, let's figure this out. Let's walk through this. Let's work together. Let me talk to people. I mean, it's an honor to sit with each of you. Some I know better than others, but to have this perspective broad, I'm learning as much as I'm sort of offering whatever I have to give. And there's no way to really study for this, as you sort of said. It's like if you ask me about my career, I can unfold stories for days and days and days effortlessly. This is sort of, it's not challenging in that I'm, sort of afraid to totally open up and let loose and give everything that I have to this moment and to everybody watching. But, I'm here to learn and absorb perspectives from each of you who I respect greatly, as much as I am to offer my 2 cents on the matter. And certainly I'm honored to be sitting with each of you here.
I would say hip-hop has done something that has evolved, and I think as we've evolved in the expression of it. So if you remember, thinking back to the heyday of Mobb Deep, and it was very grimy. It was, for real niggas ain't got no feelings, right? Yeah. And so being this guarded, untouchable type of soul was a thing that was championed, right? And so then it seems like hip-hop sort of evolved, and then it became more of a crew love thing. And then it became my day ones. And then it became it's us against them. And while us against them has always kind of been there in our culture, but it was never really expressed in music of, enjoying yourself and other people. And I think that there's still layers to go in how we express ourselves, but I think that how it mirrors or reflects or projects into social media, people don't want to talk about their relationship, because sometimes
the relationship with
love in its many forms, whether it's love of my child, whether it's love of a woman, whether it's love of a man, whether it's a love of my family, whether it's a love of a stranger, and I'm sure as a photographer, you may get people who say how much your work meant to them because it signified a time. Or someone may see one of your clients' haircuts and comment about it, and it's just, or they may not. And it's this weird thing where it seems like love has to, how you express love has to be safe for you because of the perception. I'm sure you get a bunch of, you specifically, when I look at your snaps, you will always play music as you're walking. And, you're giving honor to these people. And a lot of times, people who are in the music industry don't know how to give love to each other. We don't know how to say, yo, that's a dope record. Even like the Meek Mill Drake beef it seemed like it ensued because Drake didn't post about his album. He didn't show enough love. And it's like, but even that was a step, because now it's become this thing where if your homie puts out an album, you go and buy 10, 20 CDs and you post it. Hey, look, I'm supporting. And, and that's its own subject. But, I think that love has grown in how we express it, and it is no longer taboo, just because we've now accepted that love has different layers, and there are several different things that you're allowed to love publicly.
I'm from Virginia, so one thing that was really different for me moving up here to New York is that, like, New York, you have to really kind of have one, like, your Superman cape, like, at all times. I think that plays a big role as far as, like, being vulnerable. Because a lot of times your connections, like, back home are rooted in, like, we went to, like, kindergarten together. Your mom. New York connection's a little bit different if you're an outsider, because there's not that deep-rooted, like, childhood, moment that you get to build with someone. And so a lot of the connections you build are off of, like, your interests or your hobbies or your profession. So, it's kind of hard to be like, yo, Steve, man, how you doing, man? I've had a really bad day. I haven't seen you in 6 years. And, you may shed a tear. A lot of times, like, in New York, it's just, and I think that kind of goes back to hip-hop and hip-hop culture, because it's from New York. And so it's a very much, like, alpha, put on my Superman cape, like, I'm indestructible. And sometimes, like, I feel like when I step away from New York is when I'm really the most vulnerable, because there's no need to be, I could just be Corey, I could just be a regular guy.
Is safety a requirement for love? And as men, do you get tired of having to be brolic or aggressive, even if it's not super aggressive, but just owning your space and having to have your force field up all the time?
For some, probably. For me, not so much. To piggyback off of what you were saying earlier about your children, I don't think, looking back, and especially in this conversation now that I can think back, that I really knew what love was like outside of my immediate family until I had my daughter, right? Because it's a level that, it's a territory and a level that you've never experienced firsthand before. So you're operating in uncharted territory. You really don't know what's going on because there's no rule book. You can go by what your dad and uncles and cousins and brothers may have told you, but that was, their experience. That may or may not have anything to do with your experience. And I think for me, looking at it, if I can give an example of like an onion, when I had Madison, a layer was peeled back, and I became even more exposed. But I kind of walked around with this, like, I don't really care anymore, because all that matters is what she thinks. All that really matters is she taken care of. All that really matters is her now, because it's a different level than mother, father, sister, girlfriend, wife.
It's like self, almost?
It is, but it's a level of like having to be responsible. It's a level of responsibility that I can't compare it to anything else. But I wouldn't trade it in for nothing else either.
Lucky, I like her. There's a phenomenon in social media of men and their sons, right? I'm seeing more of that. I've seen that with you, Chris. I've seen it with Rich Medina, a guy named Logan Hicks. Just that men are very willing. And I feel like it's more so than women, because I didn't know men could go that deep. So I was raised with a particular style of men, army men, and my mother raised me alone. So in the house, I wasn't really getting that kind of interaction. But when I did with my uncles, it was more like, you're gonna eat that. What changed? Was it how you were brought up?
It wasn't how I was raised in a positive way that shaped the type of father that I am. I think that there's never been really a guide to express how to be a dad, or to share the joy that came from it, right? You think about the difference between the expectation of Mother's Day and Father's Day. On Mother's Day, it's like you're scrambling on that Saturday, May whatever, if you don't have a gift or you haven't made a reservation
end
at
of the world.
Cheesecake Factory or whatever her place is,
That's a lot.
you're an idiot.
You're in the doghouse.
And you can't, and it's almost like you feel this compulsion to give back to mom. And that's all that we knew. Father's Day came around, we had to share it with grads. It was dads and grads, and it's just like, you're lucky if you got a phone call. Or, send grandpa a card or a tie or some socks. Something that is insignificant
Something
and
practical.
something, right. And I think that sharing fatherhood on social media now allows other people, and the reason why I do it mostly is because I know that there's a 19-year-old dad, there's a 17-year-old dad like my dad was, who has no clue of what he's doing. He has no clue that being a dad can also afford you and allow you the opportunity to be a social person, to be an artist. It's almost like being a dad was almost, or sharing it was, well, you must be with the mother of that child, and so that means that you're unavailable to other women. And that was something that most people, they didn't want to pigeonhole themselves out of any potential opportunities to. And, one thing I will say that dads have never really had to suffer from is when women become mothers, usually that shapes what career they can have and what they can't. And that's the travesty that I think has affected a lot of cultures, particularly here in America. And that's why for me, it's just like, I like to show the balance of, yes, I may party until 6 a.m. on a Wednesday, but at 7:15, you also see me taking my son to school. And that's the point. It's the balance. You can do both, and that's the sacrifice that you make. Your child should not have to suffer from the decisions that you're making.
This made me go.
But the flip side of that, as a man raising a daughter, I'm very hesitant to do what you do and what Rich Medina and all the other fathers do that share their sons. Like,
Right.
I can't do that with my daughter. Right. Because there is some idiot out there that's going to look at her wrong.
Yep.
But I respect what you guys do, and I admire what you guys do, because there is that 19-year-old out there who just found out he's a new father. He's looking at his past, may or may not have had a father figure in his home, but he's getting a first-hand view.
In being men, do you want to experience being loved and feeling useful?
Absolutely.
Yeah, why not?
Say more. We need to know, please.
I mean, the purpose of Mother's Day is to show appreciation of the person that birthed you, that brought you into this world, that carried you for 9 months. So we're celebrating the fact that she took all of those things into consideration to have you and to bring you in this world and to raise you to be the person that you are. So to show appreciation, we shower you with gifts and stuff. So, but what happened to the father, the man who also helped that process, because it takes two people to have a baby.
The reason why Father's Days and men are not celebrated is because a lot of fathers weren't there emotionally for their kids. So I just started, when you guys were talking, I just started to think about, I grew up with a single mom, but I saw my father all the time, but my father wasn't there emotionally. He was very dry man. So it's interesting now that he's getting older that, one, he's showing feelings,
How? Like, how are these?
Yeah, my father complains all the time that his kids don't call him, and he's feeling lonely, and just kind of dealing with depression and stuff like that. But he doesn't understand that he didn't plant those seeds. And there's a lot of dads like that.
It was more so to give a brief explanation. Like, my father passed away in 2015. So prior to that, as I was young growing up, even though he was my father and he was around, but he wasn't around.
Yeah.
So I'd wake up in the morning, he's not home. I'd go to sleep, he's not home. So I'd never seen him. Only time I saw my father actually after the fact was 8 years after my sister was born, when I was 8 years old. So, and I guess, you know, he started to come around at that point in time. Fast forward now, he's retired. He's not the same anymore. He's going through these things or whatever. And I remember vaguely there was a situation where him and my mother were in a room and they were having an argument. And I was the mediator of the argument, kind of trying to rectify things. And my mother said something to him that aggravated his soul, and he got up and walked out the room. And at that point in time, like, I was still kind of like upset with my father as far as like not being that person that was there. The one thing that I used to always say was just like, my father taught me one thing, never to be him. You know what I mean? So with that mentality in my head, it was like, okay, he walked out the room. So, but another part of me was just like, go out there and see what's going on with him. Like, why did he just get up and walk out? And I went into the next room, and I was like shocked because he's in my sister's room, but nobody's in the room. It's just him, and he's crying. And I'm looking at him, and I'm just like, I walked over and I hugged him, and I was just like, I love you, Dad. And he was just crying, and I was like, I said it again. I was like, yo, I love you, Dad. And he was like, I love you too. That's the first time in my entire life that I ever said that to my father. And that's the first time I ever heard it come out of his own mouth towards me. So to hear that and to see that, that's probably the first time that I had a look of love from my perspective. And then, you know, one of the best things that he's done from that point on was be a father to me, was tell me, yo, I did some stuff back then. I don't want you to be that way. I don't want you to grow up and do this. You know, I want you to be this type of person, whatever, whatever. And so as much as it hurt that he passed away, I'm still okay with the fact that he's in a better place, because I learned in that little short period of time a lot from him that I didn't possibly learn in the years that he wasn't there. So that's probably like the first time that I saw love. And then I look at men differently, because like you said, when they get older, they want more. And that's because they reflecting and they're thinking about what the things that they were doing in their past. And as young men growing up into adolescence to adults, we have this mentality of just living our life and just doing whatever we feel freely to do, without no thoughts of the repercussions that it may cause on anyone else, because we're just living for ourselves. But when we reach that point where you start to look towards the future and say, well, what am I leaving behind? What type of legacy am I leaving behind? What type of person am I, presenting myself to be in front of everybody that's around me, my family, my friends, my peers? And when you start to reflect about that, that's when you start to think and say, all right, I need to be around my family more. I need to tell, the people that I haven't spoken to in a while, I need to speak to them. I need to be more visible, because when I'm gone, I'm gone. And what is there to be left behind once I'm gone?
Let me ask you this. So, a lot of us have voiced that being a father has kind of allowed us to see love a little differently, right? And seeing our fathers allows us to now maybe understand how they attempted to show love in certain aspects. But because the first thing we mentioned was that love has so many different layers, let's talk about another layer, right? Because obviously, I think one of the most confusing things is a lot of times women don't exactly know what we're thinking. And
No. We never know what you're thinking.
Right.
Spend time thinking about what you're thinking,
Mm-hmm.
thinking about what you're not thinking,
Mhm.
discussing it with other women,
Mhm.
getting on group chats,
Right.
reading,
Mm-hmm.
ignoring,
Mm-hmm.
trying.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to Steve Harvey.
No. Nothing against you, Steve. You gotta you do whatever you do well. Bless you, but no.
What do you think of love when it comes to women? What do you think of love and how our love differs from theirs? Because I think if we, obviously we speak different love languages. I think we've all heard of that. But I think what happens is when it comes to women and women with men, or whatever the love situation is, we forget that we speak different languages. And so it's kind of like, unless someone is saying exactly what you want to hear or what you think they should be saying, we cut them off and we're dismissive. So I think since we have so many women who are viewing, we should talk about what we think of romantic love, its place in our lives, and where you see that we're different. So how are we different from women when it comes to love?
What do you need to experience love?
Probably out of like 5 different relationships, like 4 of the 5, they're divorced or going through divorce. And when you have so many different options to look at, and if you're extra picky, you can start looking at the person that you love and be like, yeah, I don't like that about you, but I love this girl that got 1,000 likes for this one pose in the picture. Like that. That's one part of it.
The shiny.
Yeah, the shiny thing. And then there's the other part that's like, all right, what we're doing might be getting old, and I may have evolved into someone else now.
Yeah.
You might not be evolving into that person that I thought you might, and that's putting a perception on a person of what you thought they would be. I think those type of things start to like meld, and then that's where the questions are raised on both sides. Some women are like, oh, you're way too immature at this age, or you're way too slow for where I want to be. You're not doing the things that I thought we were going to do at this point. They start putting like certain markers based on what their girlfriends are going through. There are all those different things, and what ends up happening, all those things start to compound on the actual love that you have for that person. So when you have all those different factors, it ultimately comes down to, do you want to make sure that you keep this or keep this going?
Men in relationships or not, what support do we want in those specific cases?
I think it boils down to just how invested are you. So in my relationship, I probably know more or a large amount of what goes on in her company, and I've met a few people, but I know from the president all the way down to the new hires, personalities, job description, who's about to get let go, who's, on the verge of a promotion because I'm invested.
Right.
Right? So my communication in terms of that is stellar. On the flip side, she's equally as invested. So whether it's sourcing fabric, track meet with my daughter, going from a manufacturer to pick up product, delivering product to a client, like I'm constantly in my car, she's always by my side. So she's invested. So I don't need to hear it. I need to see it.
That person, whether you're a father or just in a relationship, that person is part of your purpose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That you're making time and you're making effort and you're creating space. I mean, as busy as I am flying around, jumping a plane, there's always, it's always picking up the phone. It's actually like, spending that time, giving that moment.
How do you show your own self love?
I show myself love by photography at some point in time. That just means me being able to go wherever it is that I feel like going and capturing images the way that I feel that I should capture it to make me feel a certain type of way about those images and for me to feel a certain great way about what I just did today. I took a day out of my life to actually come and do this for myself. It's not for anybody else, it's for me. And I appreciate it. And all right, cool, I'm ready to go. You know, it's taking that time for yourself to make sure that you do the things that you want to do.
The biggest thing for me, before, I would say like, it would be like, oh, the spa thing. Like, oh yeah, you know, that's how you treat yourself.
It's time to invest in the spa.
Exactly, I think that's
Or
what
even
folks gotta
some
do.
massage lotion.
But I think now though, which is so wild to me, just to pass time of reading, I could get a couple of books and go somewhere, like if I'm on the beach or whatever, just chill with a couple of books type of thing. That's like heaven to me.
As men, what do you wish we knew about love? What do you wish and not we like women, but as a man, looking at it from a man's perspective, what do you wish others knew about love?
Learning to decipher between what's real, what's not. And when you can identify with what's real, seek more of that.
You know what you like, you know what you dislike. So you can look on social media and be able to filter that to a point to where you know what you're going to deal with and what you're not going to deal with, what's a facade and what's real.
If someone says, well, I need you to do the whole line for a new TV show, or you know, I need you to do the wardrobe for an entire TV show, that's huge. That may take a lot of your time. But because it's you showing your love to something, that is you showing love. It isn't you shutting your significant other out. It's definitely not you shutting your daughter out, because you would probably include them, right? And so, but that's you showing love, starting from self out into the world. Your photos that you take, they're all love, because otherwise you would take crappy photos. They wouldn't be iconic. How can you capture a photo of someone that you see all the time, and you could look at a photo and feel something different about them? It's because it was shot with love, the same way that we cook, right? You cook a meal with love and you can taste the difference in it. When you cut people's hair, you're making them feel better about themselves. If you're having a terrible morning, you could still give an incredible haircut, and that person now feels incredible. And you know, did you see the brother who donates haircuts to the home? And it's just like, do you see the difference? Do you see how some of these people are really beautiful under their exteriors, and it took love to actually have the craftsmanship to do that.
I credit him. I think his name is Mark Bustos. Yeah, that's love right there.
Right, and so that's the thing. A lot of times, I wish that more women knew that we are loving. We love ourselves enough to pursue our passion, even though it may come at an age and a time thing that's different than them, right? We do love other people because we hope to use that self-passion and that self-thing to inspire others and to make a mark and to make a legacy. And then once we feel fulfilled in those things ourselves, it makes it a little easier for us to love somebody else.
I think that I'm a little bit different than I was when I started. I definitely appreciate all of you, and what I was experiencing during the conversation, and was thinking about when I first started to learn about art, and that artists create in response to something. And you all responded so eloquently and so well. I feel like I'm going to call this conversation a masterpiece. Thank you all for participating. Thank you all for your manliness. Thank you all for your courage and your honesty and your time. I've loved each and every one of you in all your different ways. Thank you.